Welcome to The Good Pod, where today we'll be talking The Good Wife, Season 1, Episode 19. Boom. I am one of your hosts, Jason Reed. With me, as always, not the podcast plumber, but my podcast co-host, Marissa Garza. Marissa, you good?
I'm good. Jason, are you good?
I'm good. Very good.
Good.
So, yeah, listen,
What?
very interesting episode of the Good Wife here.
It was definitely, we talk a little bit about what it's like to rewatch a show from the early 2010s. There are some things that really remind us of a time, and this is one where the case of the week really reminded me of a time in our life that we've kind of not really grown out of, but it's still here.
And of course, we'll talk about it, but I feel like, again, the ending of this case is just like... It just goes away. It's like, okay, great. We don't really get a great bit of resolution, but before we dive into everything, we've got some housekeeping to take care of.
Always.
If you want to support this podcast in some free, easy ways, we got a few ways that you could do that. No matter what podcast platform you're listening or watching us on, there's some way to leave us a good feedback, either by rating us with 5 stars or however many rating systems your podcatcher uses. Rate us the best, please. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a written review as well as 5 stars. On Spotify, just 5 stars is enough. If you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to hit the little thumb button down here. Helps us to get into the algorithm and get into more people's eyes and ears on those platforms. If you have any feedback for us, you can leave some feedback for us on our email, thegoodpodfeedback@gmail.com. As always, thank you so much for rating, reviewing. We did get one new review.
All right.
For Apple Podcasts since last we got together. So I do want to read that out because, again, if you leave us a written review, we will read it on the show. This one is entitled Great Guides to the Good Verse by Morrison10014. It goes as such. Jason Reed and Marissa Garza are as entertaining to listen to as the King's shows are to watch. That is
high praise.
A fantastic compliment. That is high praise. Morrison10014, we really, really appreciate it. Again, it's kind of the highlight of my day, my week, when we get a really, really good positive review. So I love it.
I'll tell you, he does get really, like, he screenshots it, shows it to me right away. He's very excited.
Yeah.
So, and also, like, we don't put ads in our podcast. This is like the best way that you can help us help get more people to listen, especially with another show coming our way coming soon. This podcast is dropping the week Elsbeth premieres. And just as last season, we're going to cover Elsbeth here on The Good Pod. And instead of, taking away our coverage for The Good Wife, Jason and I thought, why don't we just put 2 podcasts a week? Yeah. So Elsbeth will drop on Saturdays. Good Wife will stay on Mondays. So if you or your CBS procedural friends would like to join us in the coverage of Elsbeth, that will start the Saturday after the premiere, which I think is like the 20th or so. So keep your eyes out for that. Ears mainly, and eyes, I guess.
Yeah.
Keep your senses out for that.
Keep all your 5 senses tuned. When you want to taste the podcast, you want to smell it, keep all those senses out and ready for our podcast every week. Marissa, now we did have some other little bit of fun this week. It's a little weird because, in case y'all didn't know, we do record our podcast ahead of time. So this week we actually went on another podcast to talk about The Good Wife. It was kind of a weird way this came about, but we went on the podcast Rob and Akiva Need a Podcast. So if anyone has found us through my work on Rob Has a Podcast, you might know what Rob and Akiva Need a Podcast are. Basically, these 2 guys, Rob and Akiva, spin a wheel to know what they want to talk about. And this week it landed on they want to solve mysteries. And someone named David, whoever you are out there listening to us, we thank you so much. David. Because, David, you wrote into them for their mystery podcast and said, you want to know why. So I need to form this to not try and spoil some of our Good Wife new viewers.
Some very well-known behind-the-scenes lore that is still a mystery to this day.
Yeah, we can say I can say a feud, if you will, between 2 high known actors on The Good Wife were feuding. It led to some weird story elements, led to some weird story choices by producers later in the show. Well, that's all we'll say on that. But we basically were invited to come on to talk about this feud, why it came about, who was responsible for it. And me and Marissa went on Rob and Akiva Need a podcast and we talked a little bit about it. We had a great time. We
We
had a
did.
blast kind of coming on another podcast and talking about the show that we love. We hope we gain some new followers, new listeners from that. So if you hear from that, we welcome, we appreciate you. So yeah, we had just a little bit of more fun this week talking about the Good Wife.
Yes. And if you, because of the time change in recording, if you are
Yeah.
like, what is this podcast? Our podcast should be out by then. So you can go look up Robin, Akiva, Need a podcast and listen to our episode. There were a lot of mysteries solved and not solved on that podcast. But it was an
I wouldn't even
entertaining
put
listen for sure.
I would even put a question mark on it. I'm not sure what the topic of the podcast was supposed to be. I think we were supposed to be solving mysteries. We didn't really solve any mysteries. We just kind of talked about them. But we had a blast because we did our little segment on the Good Wife feud, and then we were able to stay longer and talk about more of these quote unquote mysteries that Akiva had brought to the table. It was really a blast. So if you want to hear more from us together and a couple other personalities, if you want to check that out, it's going to be a few weeks old at this point. So find the Rob and Akiva Need a Podcast one where I think it's Rob and Akiva Crack the Case. I think is the title of the podcast.
And these mysteries are like old mysteries. You're not gonna. It's not a time sensitive podcast. You're gonna
right,
be
exactly.
okay.
They're evergreen
listen.
mysteries.
Yeah.
So yeah, check that out if you get some time. It was a fun time. It was a blast.
It was. Thanks to both of them for having us on, and thanks to all of you for listening. Jason, we're season 1, episode 19. As we do every week, creeping closer to the end.
Only 3 episodes after you told me this season was going to end. We're three episodes bonus of what you said was going to be season 1.
Lesson learned. Always scroll down the page. What can I tell you?
Yeah, I'm happy we're still here, though. I'm happy to be talking about this show. So let's dive into the case of the week. We've done enough jibber jabbering so far. Let's get into the case of the week.
All right, we'll stop our yapping and get into it. This case, I've got to tell everyone, I took a lot of notes on this one. There's a lot of things to talk about. We start off like seeing a drawing from a cartoonist, so we know there's going to be some aspect there. But the main thing that's happening in the case is there was a pipe bomb that was thrown into the newsroom, into a newsroom layout office, like back when newspapers like actually were like being cut and pasted together in the old school way. There used to be a room called the layout office where you would actually lay out the pages of the newspaper so they could go get printed, and that's where this bomb went off.
Yeah, people used to have to go to an actual office to have things printed and get together instead of people just being in different locations and sending things in through like email or through other apps.
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. And a man named Jeffrey Sanborn was the managing editor, and he was killed. I mean, I'm sorry, correct that to loss of life or something. They did not want him referenced as being killed in the deal, but he is no longer alive. There's a deal on the table for his family to be compensated $350,000. And at this point, the wife is like, they say to take like 6 months after someone dies to make a really big change, and I'm just going to fire all my lawyers. That's about it.
This is so bizarre because it's like, Sanborn, why are you being so dramatic? Why it was a whole production with introducing her new legal team. She's like, like you said, they really say you should take 6 months before we make a change, and it's been 6 months, so here we go. I'm firing my legal team, bringing in a new one. I feel like this was from Stern's urging. Like, I feel like we should really, make a show when we do this thing, because it was very an odd way to go about doing this. It just seemed very planned and very staged.
Well, yeah, because she's like, hey, I got a new lawyer, and it's like they are waiting for, and technology again wasn't that great, waiting for the signal to come up the elevator and go into this room. And
she's like I said, I need new lawyers. Where are they? Like, oh, you can get the signal in time.
And last time we saw Stern, he basically said, hey, I'm gonna take like I'm going to take my clients, and then I'm going to come back for all of your clients to Diane. And this is we've been dealing with the fallout of that ever since that episode. And so he's back to kind of go back and get all of those clients from Diane. But what this means for the client, Mrs. Sanborn, is like, hey, we got to start all over, because we got to this point where you were almost going to be given $350,000, but because you're changing your lawyers, we're going to have to start over. And she's like, that's cool. I'm confident because I have Stern with me here. Yeah. And he walks in and acknowledges and names Jason. Julius Kane.
Julius. It only took him 4 episodes to get a name, but he finally has a name. He is Julius. Julius Kane. I love what he said to my name. I was like, thank you so much for finally naming this black lawyer. And I think, we're gonna get into a little bit more of Julius this episode, and I think they really kind of called out some things that we've been saying
Yep.
about Julius and his role in the firm. So I think that's going to be very interesting. But yeah, I did a little clap for Julius when he finally got a name this episode.
Yeah, that was at the same time that he was telling Alicia to go get him coffee. So he's really still himself. Stern wants to change the strategy in this case and run this as this was an intentional act. And this is like really surprising everyone. They're like, wait, this was just like a bomb that was thrown into a newspaper office. This can't happen. It was like an accident. The newspaper has like no liability in this. But Stern is saying, well, there was that one time where they printed this political cartoon that had the Prophet Muhammad in it, and that is not cool with a lot of people on the planet. And they should have known that this would incite violence, and they didn't increase their coverage. So, therefore, this man's death is intentional. What do we think of this argument, Jason?
I think it makes sense in a way because we have previous instances where they know that it's literally when you print the Prophet Muhammad in a cartoon, we know that there are people out there that will take action against the newspaper, against the cartoonists, against people that printed this. So I mean, there is some viability to the argument of like, well, you knew that this was going to cause some trouble, and they mentioned like they didn't increase security, they actually brought security down. So
Yeah.
they, by them knowing this would cause a problem and not having the right security in check, then yes, they were liable for this man's death because they didn't secure him or the premises like they probably should have, knowing the trouble that was going to come their way.
Yeah, I feel like what for me, I didn't like the use of the word intentional, but I guess that's like a legal thing that needs to, because yes, I agree with you. I think they're liable here in this situation.
Yeah.
But whether they sat there and planned and were like, how do we get rid of Jeffrey Sandberg? I don't know how that would go, but if the legal term here that you had to use was intentional, then that's what it was. Just as a time check for everyone on when this episode was coming, there was a period of time, and I did not realize it lasted this long. But there was a period of time in television where Islamophobia and jihad and racial profiling of Arab people was really like the hot topic. Like,
it's what the show 24 was born off of.
like it was everywhere. There was a special episode of The West Wing. This episode aired in April of 2010. So they're not too far away from the 10-year anniversary of 9/11 at this point in time. And this is still a conversation that's happening in television. And then I don't think it's really a conversation that's left our society. It's just kind of like included more people or like morphed and also it still included people who are Arab.
Yeah, it's definitely way more frowned upon now. There's definitely more people that speak out of, against it when it happens, like on TV, when they make bad depictions of Arab people. It's definitely talked about a lot in a negative light. But I think back in 2010, it was less frowned upon. It's just kind of like that's just kind of what
it was like every criminal was Arab.
Right. Yeah. And no one really batted an eye at it because that's how much of an indelible mark that 9/11 left on our society, where we were willing to vilify this whole, nationality, this whole race of people. It's just like we didn't really bunch up against it at the time. That's just kind of where we were as a society. And I mean, of course, in those times there were less avenues to express frustration with this. But I think now we have so many ways and avenues where if you find this an issue, you can say it, and there's more people that are more outspoken about it. But I think definitely in that era of time in TV, and unfortunately in real life, there was this fear that TV shows and movies really kind of exploited of this race of people. So that, looking back at it, it was definitely a bad thing to do, to really kind of paint these people in one brushstroke. It's kind of a shame that they painted the same people with one brush, and it was just a bad thing to do in TV and movies, and no one really kind of bristled against it, but we do now, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think the show itself does do something interesting here as the story proceeds, and it was like really interesting to me who brings this up, so we'll continue talking about it. But I was like very surprised at the commentary around this profiling basically throughout the entire episode. Okay, so back to the case. Miss Sanborn is all like, yeah, cool, we're gonna need another case. I'm all with that, and also I'm 100% on board with being used by Stern to take this firm down. I was
Yeah,
like,
because
what?
Stern's like, she knows I'm using her to get at you guys. She's already aware. She's like, yep, I'm cool with it. I'm good.
Yeah, she's
Wow, okay.
all about it. Stern takes a moment to pull Alicia aside and kind of remind her, like, hey, yo, I know you know that I have dementia, but you were my lawyer at the time, and you cannot break privilege and use this or tell anyone about my condition.
Well, I mean, because when Stern comes in, Alicia's like, and how are you, Mr.
How are you
Stern?
feeling?
I know what I know, and you're walking around here like you don't have a secret to hold.
Yeah, it was a really interesting conversation because Stern also let some information drop that's pertinent to Alicia's life, trying to kind of say like, hey, I know something about you. I'm going to do you this favor. Do me the favor of like not saying anything and, about my condition in this case. So they go to the newspaper office. They find out that a group has taken response. This was also another big thing that would happen during this time, is that like an event would happen and then a group would take responsibility for whatever happened. But there was a group that made a video taking responsibility for the bombing. Apparently, they had also bombed a synagogue at the same time. And that, at first glance, I was like, where is that going to go? But that's a really key piece to this entire story. We find out a little bit more about how the cartoon got into the newspaper. There was a contest here, and it turns out that not only was Sanborn aware of the contest, but he actually helped choose the cartoon to run in the newspaper. So it was a little surprising at that fact.
Yeah, I mean, and that's important because the art people are going to use this to say, well, Sanborn was the one that helped choose the picture, so he is partly responsible for this act that fell upon him because he knew what the cartoon was and he said, go ahead and do it. So, you can't put all the blame on the owner of the paper because Sanborn was
Yeah,
one of the people that helped
yeah,
decide.
yeah. And they're asking like, well, do we know who drew the cartoon? And the guy who runs the newspaper's like, it was an anonymous account. I ran it through a proxy. And I loved how Diane was like, I'll get Kalinda on it. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we'll figure it out.
Get Superwoman on
Yeah.
this.
So Mrs. Sanborn is on the stand being questioned by Stern, claiming, and she's claiming that her husband had no idea that the cartoon actually did depict the Prophet Muhammad. In this case, she's like, I saw the cartoon. It was just a Muslim man at this point. It was not the Prophet Muhammad, and it was Mr. Clay's decision, who is the editor who's the client of Stern Lockhart, to add the Prophet Muhammad to this to create more controversy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then
But I mean, we do meet with the kid that, and he turns out to be a kid.
But can we like talk about how we got to the kid for a moment? I just thought it was so funny.
Yeah.
Is like, let's meet with this like cartoon expert man who's basically using like early Google image search to narrow down the situation. And I always love in early 2000s media where it's like someone will be using a computer and the person has to sit next to them to get the information. And that's what Kalinda was doing.
She's like, all right, now narrow it down to this. Now narrow it down to that. Like use location. So yeah, it's always the nerdy IT guy that's talking about narrowing down the searches. But yeah, that was a really fun little side mission with Kalinda being very sketchy of this guy, and then the guy actually proving he's valuable in this way.
Yeah, and it turns out it does lead, as you were saying, Jason, to a 15-year-old kid who drew the cartoon, and it turns out like originally it was just a Muslim man in this cartoon, but he decided to change it to the Prophet Muhammad because if he didn't, then the fundies would win. And I mean, I can't say like that takes a lot of courage and a lot of gusto. His mom wasn't too happy about it, but I could see why he did.
I love Alicia's ignorance. She's like, the fundies, and then Clinton's like, the fundamentalists. Like, It's okay, dear. We understand you're white. We get it. You don't know.
Well, and I also like the kid because Alicia's like, why'd you do that? He's like, I don't know. I'm 15. Why do I do anything? Like, and
Alicia's like, fair. Like, I have kids. Fair. I get it. Like, I know you guys just do anything because, just
just
because.
because. And she is asking him, like, hey, will you testify? You can testify in the judge's quarters. You don't have to, like, be in public or anything. And I think here the family has a really good point. Like, we've seen what's happened to other cartoonists who have depicted the Prophet Muhammad. We are not getting involved in any of that. We will not be testifying. And Diane was not happy with that. She wanted to press more, but the editor was like, look, I got enough blood on my hands. I'm not going to get this kid in trouble.
Yeah. And then Diana's like, well, then we need to figure out something. You need to, like, she puts, like, we need another story
Yep.
for the jury. Like, we gotta find some other way to make you, make you whole here, make you not at fault in this. Cause she really wants to throw this kid to the wolves. Like, no, we get his ass in here now. And then, the Clay is like, nah, I'm just like, you can tell Clay is kind of a good-ish guy. He's just like, hey, yeah, I don't want to get a kid involved in this.
Yeah.
Like, Diane's like, oh, fine. Diane's very annoyed.
I feel like he wouldn't have even printed the cartoon if he knew it was a 15-year-old kid. Like
Yeah.
he likes to walk the line of like being provocative in journalism, but at the same time does not want to have kids involved. So Kalinda's like, don't worry, I'll go back to learning about bombs because I am a walking encyclopedia. I am incarnate, and I will learn all of the things. Back at court, we get this reporter on the stand. The reporter is from the newspaper who I believed was named the Chicago Vindicator. And
Vindicator.
He is on the stand because he also reported on the bombing that happened at the synagogue and was also involved in like conversations around this. And he's like, I didn't want this to print because I knew that this could incite violence. And Diane's like, oh, okay, cool. Here's an example of you printing a Christian cartoon. And that wouldn't incite violence. We've learned a lot about inciting violence between then and now, and it doesn't necessarily take a cartoon. It can just be someone saying a phrase or taking things a certain way, and
it can be a dumb theory of people eating the cats and dogs.
Yeah.
So just tell you where we're at as a society.
That's where we're at. And I mean, we also saw it happen on January 6th. So, things happen in that way. Like, it doesn't have to be a religious cartoon. It's kind of where I'm coming from. So Kalinda's in her study phase, and she can't tell if this bomb was tossed in or not based on the way that it was exploding. Because if it was made or tossed in, it would leave residue on either cement or tile.
Yeah, I was lost here. I was like, okay. Like at the end, this is like, okay, so someone may have pulled it up from the inside of the place. That's what I left there with. Like it wasn't tossed in through a window. It was pulled up through the dumbwaiters from the basement. So someone had to be inside of the newspaper office to make this happen. Like it wasn't someone just a random somebody from the street. It was somebody in the newspaper office. So like, okay, I got that part of it. Like when they're talking about when you make a bomb with hydrogen nitrate and it stains, I'm like, huh? And she's like, basically, like she might as well just turn to the camera. Like basically, came from someone inside the newspaper office. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, I was like, she turned CSI for a moment of like, we've got residue over here and residue like blah blah blah, and I was like, what does this mean? Oh, dumbwaiters. Okay, got it. I do want to pause for a moment because at this point in the show they do show an exterior shot of the Chicago Vindicator, and I just need everyone to know that it used to be the Excalibur Club in Chicago, which was in the 90s. It was like the place to go. Dennis Rodman would go there a whole bunch of times, but it also
Marissa, you're a Chicago gal.
I was never there.
Is this where you partied back in the day? Like, did you see Dennis in the club?
Just on the news, but no.
Sure. Okay.
It was also the home of the Chicago Historical Society, and as I was looking this up, like after the fire, they moved into this building, and the people say that it's still haunted to this day. So just FYI, if you're visiting, have fun. So with this new dumbwaiter information, everyone's like, okay, now what do we do? Carrie's pulled in and he says, why don't we talk to some of the employees to see if they know anything? And then they're like, oh, which employees should we talk to? Exactly.
Gee, I wonder. And of course, everyone has to suggest. I think it's Will that's just, how about all the Muslim employees? And Clinton's like, oh, great. We're just rounding up all the Muslims together, huh? Because it has to be a Muslim. And Will's like, no, I mean, not necessarily. It's just who we're going to start with.
Yeah.
Just for no other
I
reason.
forgot how he said it, but he had a very like lawyer way of talking about racial profiling.
Mm-hmm. It's a little cheeky.
Yeah.
It's a little cheeky.
Yeah. Kalinda did end up speaking with the employees, like again in like 2 seconds. Like this was very, very fast. Talks to an
Yeah.
employee, found out the employee received a threat a week before the attacks and brought it to Clay's attention, and Clay ignored it. So this is not looking great for Clay. And the team knows it. And so they're like, okay, well, Clay's next up on the stand. Who are we going to have question him? There's only one real choice in this situation, and that has to be Alicia.
Yeah, and it's interesting to mention this kind of plays into the Cary storyline, which we'll get into. But because of what's going on with Cary in that storyline, Will is starting to really
Yep.
get a thing for Cary because, as you said, Will calls Cary into this little meeting when Cary's not really involved, and then when it's wondered, well, who can question Clay? Will, who usually would suggest Alicia for this, first off, suggests Cary. And it's actually Diane who wants to use Alicia because Alicia and Stern have a history, and Diane knows that Alicia may be able to throw off Stern a little bit with their past interactions.
Yeah, and I mean, she really did. She really did a good job there. She's asking Clay like, "Why did you publish this cartoon?" And I just want to his response of "This is America, we can handle it." I was like,
America, who maybe one of the softest countries out there, to be honest.
"Well,
And listen, we live in America.
yeah,
We know we can. This country is ready to take offense at anything. So I don't know about we're America. We can handle it. That's a little nationalistic. I'm just
we
like, take it.
changed the name of French fries after
Tough. Yeah.
9/11."
Come on. I'm not sure how much we can handle of anything. I mean, listen, I love America, but I'm not saying that we're just like, oh, we can handle anything. That's not our vibe. That's
Oh
not America's
man.
vibe.
And that like I don't think that was like a very responsible. Like
No.
she didn't have anything really to like have Clay say on the stand, and he was like in a very vulnerable position, and Stern was going to come in and he knew exactly what he needed to do, and Alicia did not let him get like 1 inch on it and just was objecting every single chance she got, and this pushed Stern to get off his train of thought and ending up having like an outburst in court.
Yeah, it was a very interesting scene because, when before they get to the courtroom, Clinton's like, Alicia says, I can't use what I know about Stern. I can't tell people what I know about Stern. And then Kalinda, being Kalinda, she's like, well, you don't have to tell people what you know, but you can still
You can
use
show
the
them.
information.
Yeah.
Like you can use the information to kind of, get your point across. And so Alicia, who is, you know, whenever Stern says anything, she just objects. She interrupts. She objects, so that Stern really gets thrown off his game. He doesn't. He has trouble remembering what his question was because, of course, you have to re-answer the question or re-question or say your question again after an objection. He just can't remember what his question was. He gets really tripped up. And Alicia's making these just kind of bizarre objections. They aren't objections based in any fact. She doesn't think these objections are going to actually work. She just wants to do it to throw him off his game. I love the look that Diane shot Alicia as she's doing these objections. Diane's like, girl, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Because these objections aren't making any sense. She's just objecting off of nothing. But it does work to make Stern forget what he was saying, to make him forget where he was in his questioning. He gets very kind of outraged at both the judge and his co-counsel. So that was a very clever and interesting way. And the looks that Alicia and Kalinda give each other is like, yeah, girl, get him. Like it was kind of odd because we are messing with a man that has early stage dementia, and we're
Yeah.
just like, yeah, get him, good girl. It's like, okay, like this is a little devious. Alicia more and more every week is just kind of like, it's kind of losing that moral grayness. She's going more and more toward the black, it seems, every week.
Yeah.
And so this is another interesting way to look at that.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting what she did with the information that Kalinda told her of like, look, you don't have to tell anyone, but you can use that information. And the fact that she did that is something that Alicia at the beginning of the show would not have done. Like that
Right.
is totally different person.
Yeah, it would have been beneath her
This,
to do this, I
yeah,
think.
because she had to have that. Even I think it was in episode 1, that conversation with Diane, where Diane was like, "This is the law. Like you did this within the law," and so she walked right up to that line in this situation.
Oh, I mean, listen, this is just an episode or two away from when Alicia was getting evidence out of
Right.
a potential crime scene.
Right.
So I mean, more and more she's tiptoeing over that ethical line while not crossing the legal one.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the thing with Stern, Lockhart, and Gardner. Like, as long as we're not crossing legal lines, I think we're good. The ethical lines, you can run all over those.
And I think that's what the show does a really good job of showing. Like, you think that the law would incorporate ethics, you think that the law would like account for some of that, but there's always this gray area, and there's always this room for people to play within the law itself. Yeah. Then comes, I think, to me, the biggest surprise of the entire episode.
Yes.
Because we have... yeah, go ahead.
Possibly the most abrupt ending to a case we may have seen thus far.
Yeah. So Cary's sitting there. Cary, white man Cary, white, very privileged man Cary, says to Kalinda, what if someone is using our bias of jihad, which is like the religious war against people that was being talked about at this time. What if people are using that bias to make us think that it was a Muslim person? And I was like, wow, where did this woke moment come from, Cary? How are you? What? How did this happen? It was such a great moment.
And I love the moment because it's a classic, because he's talking to Kalinda in this moment. It's a classic Cary Kalinda moment where Cary is talking way too close to her. Like, just leaning into her face, basically. You can probably feel his hot breath. It's like, what if someone's using like jihad to like make a cover up for someone else that actually did this? And Kalinda is actually like, huh, okay. Keep going.
That's all I got.
Like, that's all I got, really? And then, but this does spark something in Kalinda to make her go, And she runs off, and of course, Cary being Cary, yells after her like, whatever you get, I want credit. I want some credit for it, man.
Well, because we'll talk about it in a minute, but during this entire time, like, the contest is like the 6 months to junior associate is a little overdue. We don't really know what's happening there, and so he's trying to make every play that he can. He does get his chance to question the reporter who reported on the synagogue again. And he, we've talked about the fact that we don't get to see Cary in the courtroom very often, but here he again was able to show that he can do this. He can question someone on the stand and basically says, oh, isn't it interesting that it was the exact same bomb that was used in the synagogue bombing? And really, if I didn't know any better, the person who would really know the most about that bomb would be you, Mr. Reporter. And at this point, we just see like numbers going back and forth on the table, and it's like they've made a deal and that's it.
Yeah, because it's the guy, I think his name was like Thiessen or something, was the name of this reporter who they had questioned before, but like you said, he's back on the stand. And Cary kind of gets at him a little bit. He's like, there was this bomb and it was a different like triggering mechanism, right? And the guy's like, no, it was the same exact trigger mechanism. And Cary's like, oh, interesting. Because I mean, I feel like the only person that would know that is you.
Why do you make Cary sound like he's like a surfer from California?
This is kind of what he sounds like. Like, he has this little raspy voice. And he's like, hey, like, the only person that would know that is you, because you didn't put that in your story the first time, right? So how would you know the mechanisms are the same? And we just leave it there.
That's it. Like,
we don't follow up with this.
You tell me all the time not to write the show, Jason, but I had no choice.
I feel like
I have no choice.
Needs you. This needs you, Marissa. This needs you to make a better ending. Because it's like, okay, did this man get arrested? Is this man because they really are leading us to believe this man was the bomber. Because also, I don't know if we mentioned it or not, this reporter was fired by the
Right.
paper
But that had
recently.
nothing to
So,
do with his testimony.
right. As he said. So, I mean, the assumption here is that this disgruntled former reporter that was recently fired was trying to get back at the paper by bombing them. So, can I? We can get no follow up to this. We get no arrest outside the
Nope.
courtroom. Nothing.
That's it.
Nothing.
I,
And as you said, they were exchanging like settlement numbers back and forth because Stern can see where this is going. Stern's like, oh shit, I'm about to lose this. So he like gives an offer to Diane, which is 350,000, which is what Mrs. Sanborn is going to get initially.
right.
But now Diane and Co are like, you paying for this
Yeah.
one. Now the offer is 250,000. So basically, Mrs. Sanborn lost $100,000 with this
But
switch of legal teams.
don't worry. Her husband's manuscript was really great, and I'm sure she's going to sell the book and she'll make up for the difference. I think that's the story I wrote after the show. Didn't write anything.
Yeah, there you go. Give Mrs. Sanborn a good ending, even though she was obviously very perturbed with the because she made this speech in the beginning of the episode like, my husband's life is only worth $350,000.
Yeah,
but in the end, it was only worth $250,000. So you lost yourself $100,000 there, lady.
Well, yeah, so that was the case of the week. And Cary had a big play at the end of that storyline, but he also had a big play throughout the episode as a whole. When we were first introduced to Stern's team, when they come in as the new legal team for Mrs. Sanborn, Cary notices that he knows someone on the other side of the table. And it turns out he knows that person pretty well. Pretty well.
And we will refer to this person as Stern Lawyer Lady.
Okay, thank you. Because I was like, again, I didn't get her name. I just put Lawyer Lady.
This person gets no name in this episode at all. She's just the Stern Lawyer Lady.
So after they see each other and at the firm for their first hearing, Cary goes to the bar, and this lady has like some man around her finger and dismisses him. And Cary says, okay, so that's so interesting. We met up. I told you some information about this case, and then all of a sudden you're this person's new lawyer. So interesting. She's like, well, what was I supposed to do?
Yeah, because apparently, Cary and her going to college together. He ran into her, I'm sure in Cary's way, he was boasting and bragging about his job at Stern, Lockhart, and Gardner and the big case he's on. He probably pitched it to her. He's like, yeah, I'm like the main lawyer on this case about the the Vindicator bombing. I'm on that case, so I'm kind of big shit right now at Lockhart Gardner, and of course. Lawyer Lady used this as ammunition to get Stern hired by Mrs. Sanborn.
And Cary's like, okay, well, keep talking, lady. And she says, well, Stern wants you to join their firm. Lockhart Gardner's going nowhere, come join us. We have stuff going on. So Cary takes that information and asks himself, like, let's check in with Will and see where we are. This is quite a perk of working at Lockhart Gardner, that he asks Will about getting a loan against his salary so he can make a down payment on a condo. And accounting said no, so he's worried about the financial success of the firm.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense though,
right?
I mean, it
does, but it's just like, that has never been in my world.
You want your lawyers to look like they're flossing and they got nice cars and stuff. So I mean, I guess if you want to loan them money to make them look like they're big time, I guess that's cool. And it is against their salaries, so I guess that makes sense. And I loved what Cary is choosing to do with this information, because there's a scene where he's like, all right, I got this information. Who do I want to give it to? Like, what's my best play here? Because he stops outside the office and he looks between Diane's office and Will's office. He's like, I already have Diane on my side.
But that's after he gets information from Lawyer Lady that not only does he want Cary to come over, but they now have an equity partner. Yes. And they're taking 10 other people. So first he tests it out with Will of like, hey, are we good? Like, are we
Yeah.
okay? And then he goes and he uses his little charisma, his riz, to get this more information. And then it's
His Justin
yeah,
Bieber hair tricks,
yes,
it's just throwing around his hair. He uses
yes.
this
And
to
then he's like in between Diane and Will, and it's
Okay, I
like,
got the order
yeah, it's
wrong.
okay. No, I just didn't want us to not talk about the messy hair situation.
Throw your hair again.
Yeah,
Throw your
I
hair
like your
again. All
hair when
right.
you're
Yeah.
messy.
Yeah, no problem.
It was so but okay, so go ahead. So he's deciding who to give this information to.
Yeah, I mean, because he already has Diane like in his corner. So
Yes.
it's just like I could use this to really get Will on my side. And I'll be damned, it really works for him because as we said, later on, Will wants Cary more involved
Yep.
in cases. So, it really kind of works here because he's making the smart choice. But like, all right, I'm good with Diane. I can use this to really get in Will's good graces.
Yeah, I thought it was a smart baller move, actually. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
you see the chessboard in front of you. You're making the right play. Then, like in this conversation with Will, it's glaringly obvious that the new equity partner is no one other than Julius to both Will and Cary. And I love how Cary also is like, well, I didn't even think about taking the offer because like I wouldn't do that to you. I just want what's best for the firm. And Will's like, uh-huh, yep. I
Yeah,
hear
what
you.
what a what a bootlicker. That nose is so brown, I swear. He's like, I never would have even considered it, boss. I swear to you. So yeah, that was it. I mean, of course, now Will's like, and by the way, we're gonna look at that loan that you were talking about. Like, I mean,
It
this
was a good
really worked for
play.
Carrie.
Good
This
play.
really was a great job by Carrie.
Yes. So Will and Diane have to talk to Julius, and Julius is like, "Look, things are going down. I tried to be a partner here. Stern offered me a lot of money. Actually, here's his offer." And you can tell, like, Diane reads it. She,
She's like, oh
yeah,
shit.
she pauses it and then says, "We can match it." I have a feeling that means Will and Diane will have to lower their salaries to cover what is
Yeah,
happening with
that makes
Julius
sense.
here, but they don't want to lose him because of his client lists, and he's the only black lawyer at the firm. So
Yeah. You're the guy who put on the brochure. We can't lose you.
we can't. So they also dangle the like, don't forget, like, remember that diversity program we were talking
Well,
about?
no, I mean Julius brings that up though.
Yeah,
Julius is
yeah.
like, because they make him the offer, like, listen, we can match this offer, and Julius is like, okay, and Julius knows he's in a power position
Yep.
here. He's like, well, let's also talk about this whole diversity program that I've been bringing up a lot, and you guys have just kind of shooting me down. And Will is just like, listen, man, we don't have like the money to be hiring other lawyers. And it's like, well, I mean, listen, that's Julius's offer. Like, all right, fine, but
I love that Julius gets a name, becomes a villain, then uses his
he's not a
not
villain.
like
Julius is not a villain
he's
here.
not
I
like
will
okay,
not
fine. He's
put
not a
up with you
villain. He's not a villain. But
putting
he is almost
Julius was doing
he
the best for
Julius
Julius. I
was
don't blame
like
him at
in the
all.
eyes of the firm. In the eyes of the
Uh-huh.
firm, I do not think. Yes, I do think he was doing the best for himself. But anywho, and then uses that power all in one episode. Like, and apparently
Yeah.
has been championing this diversity program that we haven't, as an audience, been aware of at all.
Yeah, exactly. I do wonder if it's a thing of like where they had Julius on a couple of episodes. They're like, this Julius character, he's really kind of cool. He's really kind of grown on me. Let's give him a bigger role. And it's like, all right, episode 19 is the
This
one. We're gonna give him his name. We're gonna make him a big player. We're gonna make him one of the top lawyers in the firm. Although this is the first time we're really hearing that Julius is one of the best lawyers we have. And then also have him kind of just make this play of like, hey, let's get some diversity going up in here and really kind of shine a light on what we've been talking
Mm-hmm.
about in the last few episodes of like Julius is the only black person we've seen really at all in this law firm, and just kind of really having this show comment on it was, I thought, very, very interesting.
And also, what happens after Julius is like, okay, cool, I'll
Mm-hmm.
stay. So realistic in terms of corporate America and how things run
Yes.
because he accepts the offer and the next thing out of Will's mouth is like, okay, cool, you got to tell us those 10 people that we're going to leave. And Julius is like, but they'll stay now because like I'm here. And they're like, no, they got to go. That we don't want any turncoats. There'll be more money for your diversity program now.
Uh,
I was like,
listen,
oh,
hey, It's like, you want diversity? It's gonna cost you, buddy. You're gonna have to turn snitch, my guy. That was a smooth move by Will and Diane. It's just like, hey, how else do you think we're getting money for these lawyers you want?
Yeah.
So you better start writing down some names.
Yeah. After his victory lap with himself, I'm sure Cary then goes and visits lawyer lady, and because lawyer lady got fired for leaking this information to Cary, which again, I don't know what lady lawyer was thinking really, but she gets fired and then proceeds. Cary brings her coffee, which I thought was so nice. Like, oh,
Cary being the most smug we have seen him up to this point in the just, and we've seen him pretty smug. He was as smug as he's ever been in this moment. Like, basically, as you said, taking his victory lap to this lady's house and be like, "Hey, what's up?" Like,
I
got you
brought you
fired.
coffee.
Brought you coffee.
And I love that she's like, hey, so is there a job for me at Stern Lockhart? He's like, no.
He's like, no, what are you talking about? Like, what do you think this is?
And she dumps the coffee out, fills it with water, and throws it in his face. The best part, though, was when he leaves, like goes around the corner, comes back, and then nods goodbye.
Yeah, he's like, it was a very, very cute scene, if I can put it that way, because it was so cute because she's like dumping the coffee. She's like, the coffee's too hot to dump on your face. He's like, all right, cool, like bring it on. Like Cary he's so ready to take his like small little lumps for this because he's so pleased with himself that he's made this as you said, a power play. Like he's really done it all here, and if he has to take a small throw of water in his face, he'll take it. He's more than happy to take this water in the face because he did really screw this lady over. So he's like, hey, whatever you gotta do, go for it. I'm just glad it wasn't that hot coffee. I'm good for it. I'm good for you. Go ahead.
He like takes off his scarf though to like save the cashmere, and then he's
Yeah,
like,
of course.
It was good.
This is definitely a big Cary episode.
Yeah.
This is Cary really brought it here.
Yeah, this like we told you at the beginning. If you had not watched the show, Cary grows into his own. He becomes his own person. Sure. I guess we have to talk about Peter.
Oh no, Marissa's least favorite segment of the week.
I don't like it. It's only like the main point of this entire series, but okay, fine, I'll talk about it. Okay, so remember when Stern pulled Alicia aside and was like, hey, you can't use it, like tell anybody about my dementia. He also lets Alicia know that Gerald Cosco was the man who bought the bracelet that was talked about a few episodes ago and had worked with Peter. Gerald Cosco is meeting with Will right now. And that sends Alicia a little on edge. So she runs up there to see if that's true. And he walks out of the office and they have a little, hi, nice to meet you. I never met you before. P.S. By the way, tell Peter I'm sorry.
That is such an ominous message to have someone deliver. Like, tell him sorry for what?
He'll
like,
know.
He'll know. Like, ugh, creepy.
Yeah.
It's like, did Costco come here just to run into Alicia? Is that the main thrust?
I think so.
He has to know that Will's not going to be able to take his case due to conflict of interest, which is what he tells Alicia, like, yeah, you can't take me on as a client because conflict of interest, blah, blah, blah. But I think Costco probably just did this to bump into Alicia.
Yeah, for sure. Back at the apartment, Peter still wants to go to church. It's like, when are we getting to church? We got to get to church.
Me to church. You remember that song? Take me to church.
And Eli's like, cool, I will get a photographer. Peter's like, no, Eli, we're not doing that. I am a righteous man, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. At the same time, Golden is getting information that Childs is changing the direction of the case. He says there's a surprise witness. And at this point, Alicia's been listening to this whole conversation and she comes in and says, oh, by the way, Costco was by the office and he says to tell you he's sorry. And this is not good news for anyone.
Yeah, this really rings alarm bells for them all because it's like, okay, we know where this thing is going. Costco is going to be a snitch for the other side. I do think it's interesting for Alicia. It's like, Alicia, pick how involved you want to be with this. I mean, either involve yourself all the way or, don't get involved. She's just kind of like off to the side listening. It's like, piping up when she finds it, convenient for her. So I did like how they all stop talking when she comes in the room. She's like, hey, y'all are my kitchen.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, like, go ahead and talk freely. And they still have to look at Peter and be like, yeah, go ahead. Talk freely in front of her. Like, okay, cool.
Let me grab my eyes from the back of my head because they have rolled back. I can't. Eli and Golden go confront Cosco on a construction site. It confirms their worst fears in the situation because he basically said he doesn't answer if he's getting immunity from childs, and so they're like, oh, okay, well, this is bad. Then we get one of, I think, might be my favorite scenes in the series thus far, and maybe ever. I don't know. We'll have to see as it continues. But first of all, Jackie knocks on the door to come in the house.
No, I don't think I think she was using her key.
Oh, and Eli opened it.
And Eli opened the
Okay.
door because he heard someone using the key. I think that's what it was.
He's like, who are you? I'm Jackie. That means nothing to me.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised that Eli doesn't have, a whole dossier of pictures of Peter's family. And he's so surprised about, she's like, my name's Jackie. He's like, okay. And like, I don't know who you are. Means, like you said, means nothing to me. And just, that interaction was so fun because it's these two big forces, big personalities, kind of two kind of arrogant personalities clashing together.
And opposing forces. Like Eli's strategy goes directly against Jackie's strategy in terms of what Peter needs in the situation. And it is also funny to watch Eli like change once he knows that Jackie is Peter's mom, because like, oh, I'm his image consultant. And the way he tells Jackie that Peter's been meeting with this pastor, Isaiah, like he talks about Jesus Christ.
And as you said that Eli and Jackie have like two different strategies here. I feel like Jackie and Eli are on the same page about the religion thing, because Eli is kind of skeptical about this whole religion thing. And of course we get Jackie, who is skeptical for her own reasons.
Yes, she's skeptical because she's not skeptical about religion because she's brought up religion a number of times already. But she is very skeptical with whom this religion is being practiced, because it's being practiced with someone from 95th Street on the south side.
She's like, oh, 95th Street? With the blacks? The blacks? Does he know that there are blacks there? Yeah. Like it's almost what she does, and Eli's like, "Yep, the blacks. He's congregating with the black people." It's like, oh my gosh. And I do like with this whole interaction. I do love. I think Eli's energy is very like. If you ever watched that old show, Leave It to Beaver, what was the guy's name? Was it Ward?
The father's name was Ward.
What was the little crappy kid's name that was like?
Oh no, I have to look this up.
Yeah, you can edit this part out. Eddie Haskell.
Yes, he was like the guy next door, but he wasn't like the little guy. He was like the Kimmy.
Yes, Eddie Haskell was his name. Great, I got that. All right.
Did you ever watch Leave It to Beaver?
Right. You ever watched Leave It to Beaver, where there was the kid, his name was Eddie Haskell, and he was just kind of like this crappy kid with all the other kids. But of course, when you get near the parents, he's just this upstanding young child who would never get in trouble. That's kind of what the vibe was to Eli once he realized who Jackie was. Because as soon as he realizes that she's Peter's mom, he's like, oh, Mrs. Florick, how are you? I'm doing great. I'm your son's image consultant. Like, because at first he was really kind of crappy when he was like, when he thought she was just like some, like he thought she was some random housekeeper or something. He was just going to treat her like help, and then he's like, "Oh, you're someone important. Let me get my stuff straightened up." That's just kind of the vibe it gave to me.
Well, and I think that he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew to tell Jackie that her son was practicing with a black man. Like he knew the trigger words. He knew the trigger words to send to Jackie. Yeah, exactly. And that like really like Jackie has this interaction with Peter afterwards. That's like, I want you to go talk to this Episcopalian pastor. He'll get you straightened out. No son of mine will be made weak. And I was like, what? How did we get here? But like Peter himself is like, whoa, you're kind of scary, Mom. Like.
Yeah, because she is dead serious about this. Like, she is very like headstrong about this particular issue, like more than you've seen her for really anything else. It was just kind of interesting when she went to go look in on Peter, and Peter and Pastor Isaiah are like,
why are they always?
No, I'm not sure what that is. Like the first time when Alicia looked in on them, they were praying, so I was like, I kind of get that. But now they're just like really kind of nose to nose, like
the room is
talking.
that small.
Yeah, I'm like, the room is not a closet. Like the way you would think is like she's looking at them in a closet. Like, but no, this is a pretty big bedroom. This is the maid's quarters, but it's still pretty big.
Also, like they could go in the living room. Like it's not.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah,
I guess it's supposed to be, he's counseling
sure,
Peter, so
sure.
it's a very kind of intimate thing. I was like, you could still counsel someone just a few feet apart.
Yes.
It
It
was an
was,
odd scene to look at.
yeah. I don't know if there were like production situations where like that the maid set is like maybe somewhere totally
Well,
different and they didn't have
he's
like they
like,
just had an open door. So they're like, okay, you two stand here, like you're consulting with each other.
well, I guess it's like we want to have Jackie look in on them, but we don't want them to know Jackie is looking in on them. So we need to get Peter and Pastor Isaiah in the same frame and
Right.
just a little door peek. So I guess that was their thought process, but it seems so odd. And if you have closed captioning, you see where like it's just basically Pastor Isaiah telling him a story about a trip he went
I
somewhere.
guess.
It wasn't even
Yeah.
like anything crazy. It was an odd moment for sure.
It was odd. And you know what else was odd? They went to church.
Take me to church. Saturday night. I can't remember anything with that song except "Take Me to Church." Take me to church. It's like I think that was Hosier.
Yeah.
Hosier.
Yeah, it was Hosier.
That's this man's name.
Yeah. What do we think about this church visit, Jason? There's a lot that happens here. We've got Isaiah coming up to Alicia asking her, "Hey, do you ever want to talk sometime?" And she's like, "Nope." We've
It's like, no, sir. I'm good. I am all good with the Lord. I don't have anything to confess. I don't have any sins to to tell you or anything. I am good. It was an odd moment because she was like really kind of dismissive about it. It was like,
But I
no.
I also think like if this is the first time they're coming to church, why don't you let them breathe a little bit before you're like, "Hey Alicia,"
Yeah.
like I could see this as a leaving church conversation. Like, what did you think of the service? How do you feel? Blah blah blah. Would you ever like to talk? But it's like the second they get there, pull Alicia to the side. "Hey, would you ever want to talk to me about like life and religion?" And she's like, "No, of
Just like, nah, you're here for Peter, not me. I'm all good.
yeah,
Like, you don't gotta worry about me. So you go somewhere else with this nonsense. It's
yeah."
like, okay. And just I don't know. It was a weird Alicia was giving off a weird vibe. I mean, I understand Alicia is skeptical of this because I think everyone that sees this from Peter is thinking this may be like a Peter scam, right? He's like, oh, I want to change. I want to find religion, where they might think he's just doing this to give himself a better image. So I think she's very guarded in this situation because she still thinks this is kind of a little bit of a sham for Peter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and he, this man has been saying, I am all about religion. I really want to go to church. This is what I want to do. Then he decides to stand up and leave in the middle of the sermon. This isn't like Alicia's not going to be like, what the frick is up with this? Like, where are you going? What's going on?
And let me tell you something. I know that he thinks he was
No,
sneaky
he
with
was
this,
not.
but let me tell you something. This is a white man in a all black church. There wasn't one of those people that was in that church that wasn't wondering where the heck this man was going because he sticks out like a sore thumb. And they were all probably like, "Where is he going? Like what?" Because I mean, listen, as someone that has been a part of was a part of a black church for a long time in my youths. Listen, when someone like Peter and his family comes into church, you have all eyes on them every second of every day, like every second of every like moment they're in that church. You're like, where's that white man going? Like, what's he doing there? Like, it's just kind of the way it is, right? It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like,
He can't not stick out in this
yeah. So I
situation.
know you think you sneaky, but we see you going to the back of the church.
Well,
We wonder what the heck you doing
and
back there.
who the heck does he think he is? Like what is going I was again, I don't like him. He's not my favorite person, but he's there like I want to change. I want to be this man. Like Pastor Isaiah is teaching me so much. PS by the way, I got to leave. PS. You know what I mean? Like bye. And
I gotta take care
I
of
have an
something.
appointment in the stairwell with his good friend Costco. At this interaction, again just shows how scary Peter can be
Yeah.
because he is intimidating the heck out of Costco, who's asking questions like, "Hey, he's got stuff on me. What else? I didn't really have a choice." And then all of a sudden, Peter's like, "Do you believe in hell?" And I was like, where is this going? Like, what is happening? And he goes from, do you believe in hell, to let me rip open your shirt, show that you're wearing a wire, and then ask you, do you believe in the or have you read the Old Testament? That's the
Yeah,
kind
because
of
he's like,
Christian I
yeah, because he's, first of all, Costco already thinks, because we mentioned earlier in the episode when Eli and Golden met with Costco, and at the moment, Costco's like, I mean, listen, Peter's all about religion now.
That's
He's
weird.
soft. Like,
Yeah.
he can't help me. So I'm out on the Peter business because he's found religion. It's like, okay, cool. So at this point, Costco thinks that Peter is soft now. He's like not going to do what needs to be done. So he's kind of going more on the like Glenn Child side. And when Costco and Peter meet in this little stairwell, Costco's like, it's almost as if Costco's like, so Peter, do
Like
you want to
pushing
admit
his
to any
shoulder
bad
up.
stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to admit to any bad stuff you did in my shirt here? Like, just speak plainly into the shirt. And I think Peter is able to like read into this interaction, like,
Well, he's been
something weird's
big.
going on.
Like, this is not the first time he's like taken someone's shirt off thinking they were wearing a wire.
Yeah,
Like,
and so Peter can sniff these things out at this point,
yeah,
and he does the whole thing about like,
I got stuff on
do
your
you believe in
son.
hell?
Yeah.
No, yeah, do you believe in hell? Like, have you ever felt like you need to repent for your sins or something? He said into that
Yeah.
effect, and he's like, and yeah, he says, I don't care about the stuff on you. Because obviously you don't care about the stuff on you. Like I can't use that to threaten you, but I do have stuff on your son, your married son. I was like, oh, okay. And Costco also mentioned that Childs now has like he's like I have info on our hotel
Yep.
meeting
And
on video.
the recording. Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the
Yep.
videos that Zach and Grace received
Yep.
that was in a hotel room. So that kind of confirms that was Peter, because I think they were kind of like not sure if that was Peter or not because it was grainy. So that was a Peter video. So I think that's what they're talking about. And this is when Peter kind of sniffs out like something is hinky here, and just like rips open this man's shirt. I mean, buttons flying everywhere. He was very aggressive with it. And yeah, we can see that our dude Costco, yes, is wearing a wire. He's getting this all on tape, and it's a rough look. It's
Well,
a
and
rough
then I'm
scene.
like, and then Peter destroys the wire. And I'm sitting here going, how is this? How can you do this? Like, are you not going to get in trouble for this? Is this not
I don't know if
like
you can get in trouble by
destroying federal
destroying.
property? Or
But I mean, I didn't know it was federal
I don't know if
property.
it's
I
federal
just
property. I just made that up.
yeah,
But like,
like
I don't know. I just he's there for he's not going to be able to go back to church if this is what he's going to do. You know what I mean? Like this was
right. I'm not sure if this was Costco doing this on his own. Were there like people in a van outside the church
that's
listening in on the
true. Yeah, we don't
conversation?
know.
I don't know. Yeah, because Peter he smashes that tape recorder on that
Yep.
wall like he's the Hulk or something.
Yep.
And so that was woof. That was
And
rough.
Alicia can't stand that Peter got up during the sermon, which is like a very appropriate sermon for Peter to be hearing, and like gets
Mhm.
up and
You need
tries,
this, Peter. You
yeah,
should be here.
like come listen to this. And she sees Costco leave, sees that his like shirt is broken.
It's like what is going on back there? Like y'all taking clothes off?
Yeah, and Peter comes out and he is surprised to be caught, and
Mm.
Alicia just walks away. It is not a good look. And I got to tell you, it does not take Alicia long to be like, I am done now. Hey, Will, remember that dinner we talked about? Tonight's the night. Let's go.
Bruh, let me tell you, nothing like a woman scorned is the right label to put on this, because you can just hear, she of course she's in the kitchen in earshot of Peter.
Yep.
Which is like, yeah, hey, Will Gardner, my boss, former flame. Hey, you want to go out to dinner tonight? Like yelling loud enough so that Peter can definitely hear her. And she's got the sultry Alicia voice on, which I'm
Hmm.
sure Peter has heard before and knows. She's like, "Hey, Will. So yeah, if we weren't gonna go to dinner, right? Okay, yeah, I'll make the reservation." And she's like, "Hey, make sure Zach, gets off the computer after an hour. Make this
Make this
this frozen
pizza.
pizza. I'm gonna go out to dinner with Will. Don't worry about it. It's all good." And yeah, just that moment of like Alicia is fed up, so she's going to. This is her version of lashing out.
Yeah, like this is her burning the house down, basically. Like she's
Yeah.
like, okay, time to go. And then Peter oh, what am I supposed to do? Not be jealous? Like, come on, blah, blah, blah. And Alicia's like, look, I'm done. I thought you were like, I'm done thinking that you were going to change. You're doing the same stuff. You're not changing. And then Peter has the audacity to say to this woman, well, if that's true, help me.
Ugh.
Help
He
me.
also
And I
throws
was like, what?
he also throws a line out there of like, what was I supposed to do? I was protecting my family. Sir, like, how many times do we have to say this to you, Peter? There would be nothing to protect your family against if you weren't
Right.
doing crazy stuff.
Right.
So don't sit here and throw it on Alicia. That's what he's doing here. He's throwing this back at Alicia, like, well, you're responsible for helping me through this. Like, you need to help me change. Like, no, sir, this is your mess you got into. This is your bed you made.
Yeah.
And I think Alicia is probably most outraged because he's talked all this stuff about changing. He wants religion to help change him, but in the end, he's really used this religious act to just get a meeting with this person without eyes being looked upon him. Like, this is why he didn't want Eli to hire photographers.
Well,
This is
yeah.
why he didn't want a whole media press thing, because he wants somewhere he can go clandestinely and meet with his backroom partners.
Well, and also like not only just meet with them, but not be very Christian about it. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right, yeah.
like against everything that he's saying
Like,
he's
because
trying to change.
Yeah, Alicia sees this guy come out of this place looking roughed up, and it's like, bro,
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Like, yeah, like, what are you into? And it was such a impactful scene.
Well, and the other
Uh,
thing I couldn't stand was when he goes, "You said if we keep talking,
oh, bro,
you'll be everything will be okay. You don't even want to talk now." And it's just like, no, I'm done. Bye. See ya. And this causes Peter to cross the threshold, start the alarm, and walk out of the house. And that's where we leave this episode.
Listen, it's baby's first cliffhanger. Like, this is our first cliffhanger of the Good Wife, of the Good Pod. So yeah, listen, you guys got to tune in next week to hear what happened.
You go out for dinner, Alicia. Like that's all. Like that's all I was thinking.
Go,
Like at
girl.
the end of this episode, I was like, yeah, you go.
You go, girl. Get Will. Get Will. Get him.
Yeah.
And just the moment that Peter takes of like, what do I do here? Like, he's just standing at the threshold, like, do I do this? Like, because he knows what's at risk here. He already kind of suspects Will and Alicia have a thing, and this is his moment of reckoning.
And he also has, again, the audacity to think that like this isn't going to affect his his world, or he can still continue to run, and he can do all this stuff that he wants to do. He'll get out of this, I think, is what he's thinking. Like while he's standing there, I think he's running the calculations and being like, okay, this is what I'm going to say happened. And they'll buy it, and so I can do this.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not even sure. I don't even know if he's thinking about that.
He's that evil. Okay.
Well, no, I think in the moment he's just like, this is the choice of, do I lose Alicia or not? And I don't think there's much else going through his mind. He knows he's going to get in trouble if he leaves this threshold, but he's like, is me getting Alicia back worth this? I think that's in his mind right now. Can I talk Alicia out of this? This is my chance. This is my moment. If I don't get to her now, I might very well lose her. Is this his grand
gesture?
He probably thinks it is, but he's not thinking about the things he should be thinking about, which are, number one, his children, because this is going to affect his kids, because if he goes back to jail, they are going to be upset with that, obviously. So he's not really thinking straight. He's not thinking about all the ramifications that could happen. And neither is Alicia, but
she's trying to be,
that's not Alicia's problem right now. Like, Alicia is fed up with this nonsense, and you can't really blame her too much for having this reaction to what's going on.
It's not her fault, Peter. That's all I have to say. Thank you for joining us on the Good Pod.
yeah, Peter. Marissa,
yes.
What do you want to tell the good people about where they can find you and all your musings on the internet? Got a lot going on these days.
I mean, yes. Hello, good people. I can be found on Instagram and Threads at It's Me, Marissa G. These days, I have started a new project just like on my own. Might be bringing some friends along. Who knows? I really want to go look at millennial pop culture moments, TV moments, movie moments, and kind of try and figure out what it says about us as a generation. So that is a newsletter and podcast. I've called it a plog at the moment because I'm just talking to myself at the moment. But you can catch that over at Remember That One Time on Substack. There's a link in my bio on Instagram. But other than that, I'm just here with you, Jason.
Fantastic. In terms of what I got going on, my October.
Yeah, what's going on with
very
you,
busy.
Jason?
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at JAYR1085. So, got a bunch going on. As Marissa said, pretty soon we're going to be talking to Elsbeth along with The Good Wife. So, we got that. Also, on the Rob Has a Podcast Network, I'll be doing my thing over on the Love at First Sight feed, where I'll be covering both Married at First Sight every week. And we have Love is Blind, which is actually happening right now. So, you'll have me on there. You'll have me on the Married at First Sight, both happening simultaneously. For some reason, they decided that was a good idea. So I got about 4 podcasts a week coming at you if you in this time frame. So if you want me, you got me. You find there's a multitude of ways to find me.
Jason loves mess. He's a good mess commentator.
I'm a mess. Yeah, I'm a mess connoisseur,
Yes.
as I like to say.
Yes.
Whether it be scripted mess or reality TV mess, I'm there for the mess. But yeah, that's all we got for you this time. And until next week, stay good.